Okay, we are live, and this is chapter 18 of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. And I'm just gonna get right into it, and then um, we'll see where we go from there. It was in the fourth year of my apprenticeship to Joe, and it was a Saturday night. There was a group assembled round the fire at the Three Jolly Bargemen, attentive to Mr. Wopsle as he read the newspaper aloud. Of that group, I was one. So today, we're jumping back in. Last chapter 17 was an interesting sort of departure into rom-com almost, with this love square between Biddy, Pip, Orlick, and Estella. And now it looks like Dickens is going for another popular genre of today, true crime. So we'll get into it. But today is a longish chapter, 20 pages. So I think there'll be a lot more of me just writing, the sound of typing. Hopefully it's calming and soothing. And I'll save my sort of analysis until we get to the end of each paragraph. But I hope those of you who are able to join enjoy it, and those who are watching this in the future, I hope you enjoy it as well. But Dickens showed that he can do rom-com really well in chapter 17. Let's see how he handles true crime. A highly popular murder had been committed. And it's interesting how adjectives change. I know I said I would talk at the end of the paragraph. Last thing, how adjectives meaning change. Like a highly popular murder means something very different today. And Mr. Wopsle was imbrued in blood to the eyebrows. He gloated over every abhorrent adjective in the description, and identified himself with every witness at the inquest. He faintly moaned, "I am done for," as the victim, and he barbarously bellowed, "I'll serve you out," as the murderer. He gave the medical testimony in pointed imitation of our local practitioner, and he piped and shook. Practitioner, I think I spelled it right. Practitioner, Raghav, come on, you can't make mistakes like that at this level. And he piped and shook as the aged turnpike keeper, who had heard blows to an extent so very paralytic as to suggest a doubt regarding the mental competency of that witness. The coroner, in Mr. Wopsle's hands, became Timon of Athens, the beadle Coriolanus. He enjoyed himself thoroughly, and we all enjoyed ourselves, and were delightfully comfortable. So in these 4 years, I mean, He's really grown up, Pip, if he's just hanging out at the pub with these people. In this cozy state of mind, we came to the verdict, willful murder. Then, and not sooner, I became aware of a strange gentleman leaning over the back of the settle opposite me, looking on. There was an expression of contempt on his face, and he bit the side of a great forefinger as he watched the group of faces. "Well," said the stranger to Mr. Wopsle, when the reading was done, "you have settled it all to your own satisfaction. I have no doubt. Everybody started and looked up as if it were the murderer. He looked at everybody coldly and sarcastically. "Guilty, of course," said he. "Out with it. Come." "Sir," returned Mr. Wopsle, "without having the honor of your acquaintance, I do say guilty." Upon this we all took courage to unite in a confirmatory murmur. "I know you do." "Nothing like a good bar argument," said the stranger. "I knew you would. I told you so. But now I'll ask the question. Do you know, or do you not know, that the law of England, which used to mean something, supposes," I'm just being facetious, I'm sure it still means something, I don't live there, "supposes every man to be innocent until he is proved to be guilty." Even from Tale of Two Cities, Dickens has always concerned himself with these themes of innocence and guilt. Even just the opening, Pip is complicit in aiding and abetting a so-called criminal. So right away, he's not innocent, and yet the POV is from Pip, so we root for him. So I like that about Dickens. I've always liked it. He does seem to fight for and stand for the underdog, as we saw with Oliver Twist, of course. "Sir," Mr. Wopsle began to reply, "as an Englishman myself, I..." "Come," said the stranger, biting his forefinger at him. I'm sort of glad this gesture fell out of favor. Seems super weird. "Don't evade the question. Either you know it, or you don't know it. Which is it to be?" He stood with his head on one side and himself on one side in a bullying, interrogative manner. And he threw his forefinger. So we've had 3 mentions of his great forefinger. I really think Dickens is amazing at tagging or tethering one word to a character to make them memorable. As it were, to mark him out before biting it again and repeating the gesture. "Now," said he, "do you know it, or don't you know it?" "Certainly I know it," replied Mr. Wopsle. "Certainly you know it. Then why didn't you say so at first? Now, I'll ask you another question. Taking possession of Mr. Wopsle, as if he had a right to him. "Do you know that none of these witnesses have yet been cross-examined?" Mr. Wopsle was beginning, "I can only say," when the stranger stopped him. "What? You won't answer the question? Yes or no? Now I'll try you again." It's fun to see Mr. Wopsle, who we know is a sort of can be a domineering figure, be dominated in turn. Throwing his finger at him again. "Attend to me." Sort of a form of pay attention that has gone out of fashion. "Attend to me." "Are you aware, or are you not aware, that none of these witnesses have yet been cross-examined? Come, I only want one word from you, yes or no." Mr. Wopsle hesitated, and we all began to conceive a rather a poor opinion of him. "Come," said the stranger, "I'll help you. You don't deserve help, but I'll help you. Look at that paper you hold in your hand. What is it?" "What is it?" repeated Mr. Wopsle, eyeing it much at a loss. I love it when Dickens literally can make me laugh. 150 years later, however many years it is. "Is it?" pursued the stranger in his most sarcastic and suspicious manner. "The printed paper you have just been reading from?" "Undoubtedly." "Undoubtedly. Now, turn to that paper and tell me whether it distinctly states that the prisoner expressly said that his legal advisors instructed him to reserve his defense? I read that just now, Mr. Wopsle pleaded. Never mind what you read just now, sir. I don't ask you what you read just now. You may read the Lord's Prayer backwards, if you like, and perhaps have done it before today. Turn to the paper. No, 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 my friend. Not to the top of the column. You know better than that. To the bottom. To the bottom. We all began to think Mr. Wopsle full of subterfuge. Well, have you found it? Here it is, said Mr. Wopsle. Now, follow that passage with your eye and tell me whether it distinctly states that the prisoner expressly said that he was instructed by his legal advisors wholly to reserve his defense. Come, do you make that a fit? And I'm going to type out several paragraphs and then read them, just to have some silence in typing. Mr. Wopsle answered, "Those are not the exact words." "Not the exact words," repeated the gentleman bitterly. "Is that the exact substance?" "Yes," said Mr. Wopsle. "Yes," repeated the stranger, looking round at the rest of the company with his right hand extended towards the witness, Miss Wopsle. And now I ask what you say to the conscience of that man who, with that passage before his eyes, can lay his head upon his pillow after having pronounced a fellow creature guilty unheard. So really, Dickens is doing some social commentary, which we all know that's, Dickensian. That's the implication, that there's social commentary. But here, commenting on how we can judge people through the media, and I know I'm very guilty of it. I watch a lot of true crime, often for cases that are still on trial, and we all jump to conclusions. We all began to suspect that Mr. Wopsle was not the man we had thought him, and that he was beginning to be found out. I'm just going to type and then comment. I won't necessarily read every single paragraph. I'll just type and then comment on the page as a whole. So the gentleman continues to go after Mr. Wopsle. I think Dickens always finds nice set pieces, and this chorus commenting, we all began, we all, is a very nice way to get through this set piece. It's a really long sentence here. The strange gentleman with an air and authority not to be disputed, and with a manner expressive of knowing something secret about every one of us that would effectually do for each individual if he chose to disclose it, left the back of the settle and came into the space between the two settles, in front of the fire, where he remained standing, his left hand in his pocket and he biting the forefinger of his right. It's a really long sentence, and it has the effect of centering the gentleman, like our eyes really linger on him, and so you can't, it's a real the opposite of inconspicuous. It's a conspicuous, he's conspicuously moving center stage. From information I have received, said he, looking round at us as we all quailed before him, I have reason to believe there is a blacksmith among you, by name Joseph or Joe Gargery. Which is the man? Here is the man, said Joe. So we immediately know, right? Like, based on, when the Scotland Yard people came to town and investigated the attack on Mrs. Joe, Joe was a suspect. So we see now the parallels between the true crime and the point this man is trying to make. But where's he going? That's the enigma. Let's see if the next page resolves it. I'll write a few paragraphs and then comment. So in this paragraph, Pip recognizes the man and we get another description of him, but it's yet more proof that Pip is an excellent reader of his world. He better reads the world, he sees people, he remembers them. So this strange man wishes to have a private conference with Pip and Joe, and in a wondering silence, that phrase is repeated, they walk home, and the man continues to be tethered and tagged with biting his forefinger. So they move to Joe Gargery's home. Our conference was held in the state parlor, which was feebly lighted by one candle. I think sometimes people over-mention light sources, but sometimes it can be really nice to know in a scene where is the light coming from. I'll keep going and summarize after I write a few paragraphs. So he takes out his pocketbook, he pulls the candle to him. It's all delay. It's all delaying the resolution of the enigma. Why does he want to have a private conference with Joe and Pip? My name is Jaggers, and I'm a lawyer in London. I'm pretty well known. I have unusual business to transact with you, and I commence by explaining that it is not of my originating. If my advice had been asked, I should not have been here. It was not asked, and you see me here. What I have to do as the confidential agent of another, I do. No less, no more. So very, very satisfying deepening of the plot. One enigma is resolved, who is this stranger? But another enigma opens. What is the action he's going to take? And who is he the confidential agent of? So the man rearranges his position, more delays. So he says that he can relieve Joe of Pip's apprenticeship and cancel his indentures, and that Joe would want for nothing. So in basically, it's like the fairy godmother arriving and giving Pip exactly what he wants, satisfying his yearning. So a lot of pages today, so I'm just readjusting my position, probably not for the last time. Lord forbid that I should want anything for not standing in Pip's way. Joe is such a solid guy. Lord forbidding is pious, but not to the purpose, returned Mr. Jaggers. The question is, would you want anything? Do you want anything? The answer is, returned Joe sternly, no. Stand up guy, Joe. I thought Mr. Jaggers glanced at Joe as if he considered him a fool for his disinterestedness. But I was too much bewildered between breathless curiosity and surprise. It's always interesting when Dickens chooses to go internal. Like, so much is happening here around Pip's life, but the internal reflections are, there's not many, and then he takes another chapter, or later in the chapter he'll stop and he'll do a full reflection. But when the action is unfolding, the proeretic code, he just lets it run. Very well, said Mr. Jaggers. Recollect the admission you made, and don't try to go from it presently. Who's a-going to try? Retorted Joe. I don't say anybody is. Do you keep a dog? Yes, I do keep a dog. Bear in mind, then, that Bragg is a good dog, but Holdfast is a better. It's a very interesting idiom. Bragg is a good dog, but Holdfast is a better. Basically saying, talk is cheap. Let's see if you actually follow through. Here we are, chapter 18, and we get the title. Now I return to this young fellow, and the communication I have got to make is that he has great expectations. So here's the title, and basically it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz, like, it's more like Harry Potter getting the letter from Hogwarts. It's like your fortunes are about to change. We call this peripeteia in literature, when your fortunes change dramatically overnight. So, for example, in Jacob and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, or Jacob from the Bible story, depending on how you know it, you go from being a slave to being advisor to the emperor. That's peripeteia. So, having a great reversal of fortune in either direction. Joe and I gasped and looked at one another. I am instructed to communicate to him, said Mr. Jaggers, throwing his finger at me sideways, that he will come into a handsome property. Further, that it is the desire of the present possessor of that property that he be immediately removed from his present sphere of life and from this place, and be brought up as a gentleman. In a word, as a young fellow of great expectations. So that's what, like we said, peripeteia. His world is transforming. He's getting exactly his yearning, that he be a gentleman, that he get to a social state where Estella could theoretically look at him. So it is a big moment in the life of young Pip. My dream was out. My wild fancy was surpassed by sober reality. Miss Havisham was going to make my fortune on a grand scale. Because that is the only explanation that Pip can come up with at this time. Is, he doesn't know anyone else in his sphere who could make this happen for him except Miss Havisham. So it's very natural that Pip put two and two together. But those of us who have an inkling of where the story is going, we see this sleight of hand as, wow, this is Dickens controlling the information release to keep the suspense for the reader and to set up the big reveal. Also, because he saw this man at Miss Havisham's, that conclusion makes sense. Now, Mr. Pip, I address the rest of what I have to say to you. You are to understand first that it is the request of the person from whom I take my instructions that you always bear the name of Pip. You will have no objection, I dare say, to your great expectations being encumbered with that easy condition. But if you have any objection, this is the time to mention it. So again, another clue for those of us who know. So here we get some nice, simple, not overly literary, but sometimes you just need to keep it simple, a somatic reaction to this huge news. My heart was beating so fast, and there was such a singing in my ears that I could scarcely stammer I had no objection. I should think not. Now you are to understand, secondly, Mr. Pip, that the name of the person who is your liberal benefactor remains a profound secret until the person chooses to reveal it. I am empowered to mention that it is the intention of the person to reveal it first-hand by word of mouth to yourself. When or where that intention may be carried out, I cannot say, no one can say. It may be years hence. Now you are distinctly to understand that you are most positively prohibited from making an inquiry on this head, or any allusion or reference, however distant, to any individual whomsoever as the individual in all the communications you may have with me. If you have a suspicion in your own breast, keep that suspicion in your own breast. It is not the least to the purpose what the reasons of this prohibition are. They may be the strongest and gravest reasons, or they may be mere whim. So now all that's left is for Pip to accept these conditions. It's interesting because it's such a, golden ticket, or Harry getting the letter from Hogwarts. It's such a moment of peripeteia, but it comes 18 chapters in. So I was just wondering, I'm sure Dickens, when he was working on this, he probably in earlier drafts had this come sooner, but then realized, no, I need to get Estella and Biddy and Joe. I need to get them in. I can't squeeze them in as, ground situation, early exposition. So I have a feeling that this was probably written early and then kept getting moved as he realized how much he probably had to do up front. That's obviously speculation. Once more I stammered with difficulty, but I had no objection. We come next to mere details, of arrangement. But of course, it's those details that we're so curious about. You must know that, although I have used the term expectations more than once, you are not endowed with expectations only. There is already lodged in my hands a sum of money amply sufficient for your suitable education and maintenance. You will please consider me your guardian. Oh, for I was going to thank him. The punctuation is a bit confusing here. I tell you at once, I am paid for my services, or I shouldn't render them. It is considered that you must be better educated, which is exactly what Pip wants. It's his yearning. In accordance with your altered position, and that you will be alive to the importance and necessity of at once entering on that advantage. So Pip is having all his dreams come true. I said I had always longed for it. Never mind what you have always longed for, Mr. Pip, he retorted. Keep to the record. If you long for it now, that's enough. Am I answered that you are ready to be placed at once under some proper tutor? Is that it? I stammered, yes, that was it. Good. Now, your inclinations are to be consulted. I don't think that wise, mind, but it's my trust. Have you ever heard of any tutor whom you would prefer to another? I had never heard of any tutor but Biddy and Mr. Wopsle's great aunt. So I replied in the negative. There is a certain tutor of whom I have some knowledge, who I think might suit the purpose, said Mr. Jaggers. I don't recommend him, observe, because I never recommend anybody. The gentleman I speak of is one Mr. Matthew Pocket. Ah, I caught at the name directly. Miss Havisham's relation. The Matthew whom Mr. and Mrs. Camilla had spoken of. Pip's memory is extraordinary. The Matthew whose place was to be at Miss Havisham's head when she lay dead in her bride's dress on the bride's table. You know that name? Said Mr. Jaggers, looking shrewdly at me and then shutting up his eyes while he waited for my answer. My answer was that I had heard of the name. Oh, said he, you have heard of the name. But the question is, what do you say of it? I said, or tried to say, that I was much obliged for his recommendation. No, my young friend, he interrupted, shaking his great head very slowly. Recollect yourself. Not recollecting myself, I began again that I was much obliged to him for his recommendation. No, my young friend, he interrupted, shaking his head and frowning and smiling both at once. No, no, no. It's very well done, but it won't do. You are too young to fix me with it. Recommendation is not the word, Mr. Pip. Try another. Correcting myself. So this is just Dickensian wordplay, really, that I was much obliged to him for his mention of Mr. Matthew Pocket. That's more like it, cried Mr. Jaggers. And I added, I would gladly try that gentleman. So I'm going to stop here because it's already been an hour and we're only halfway through the paragraph, halfway through the chapter. But this is sort of, we get the title, Great Expectations. We get peripeteia, which is the reversal of fortune. Pip goes from being Joe's apprentice to a young gentleman overnight. We get this interesting, seemingly thematically connected, but not clear how, discussion at the Three Jolly Bargemen about innocent until proven guilty. And now we have some we're all sophisticated readers, right? And when someone gets what they want, there's always that adage, be careful what you wish for. So now Pip has got what he wanted. What's going to happen? You know what Biddy would say? Biddy would say, put Estella out of your mind. But we know that that's unlikely to happen. I think one of my big insights from chapter 17 is that steady, sensible characters like Biddy and Joe don't make for great novels. People like Pip, who yearn and want to exceed their station, make for good novels. So it'll be exciting to see what happens next. Later in this chapter, as the sort of details of the agreement take effect, and then as we go on into the sort of deeper into the middle, into effectively a new act. Because once this chapter is over, it'll be like we've entered, Alice is entering Wonderland, or Dorothy is leaving Kansas and entering the world of the Wizard of Oz. So yeah, very, very exciting. And so I think if I kept going, it would be another hour, and that's a bit too long. So I'll stop here and continue chapter 18 next week. Thank you for those of you who tuned in. And if you watch at a later time, if you only ever listen 5-10 minutes and it helps you go to sleep, I'm really happy. That's part of why I do it, is to put in relaxing, soothing, calming media into the world. And thanks for being here. This was a very exciting, big moment in the book, and I enjoyed retyping it, and I hope you enjoyed being there for it as well. Thanks. See you in the future.